We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. We're very fortunate to have back with us Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Tim Donner. Earlier in the show, we've been talking the basic debate performance, how various questions were pushed back against and how others weren't when they perhaps should have been. But now, Tim, I want to talk about how we have touched on this briefly, but media engagement going forward for the presidential election, because at time of recording, there's roughly 6 and a bit weeks to go. How do you think that's going to look for the candidates? How are they going to engage? How are they going to spend their time?
Well, I think the whole election, both campaigns agree, and political analysts agree, and it's an easy point to agree on, that the election comes down to 7 states. I think the idea that these outlying states like Minnesota or Virginia, which were in play when Biden was running, are probably not in play anymore, which means I don't think Trump or Harris is going to spend a lot of time outside of those 7 battleground states. But what they're going to do, I think, is do an awful lot of narrow casting, which means they'll hit particular audiences on social media, a particular podcast, a particular angle they can take with a captive audience or a single issue audience, or an audience that's particularly concerned about foreign affairs, or one that's particularly concerned about issues of energy, for example. And it looks like there will be another debate, but what kind of interviews Harris does, a lot of the pressure is off her now, Mark, because, you know, she has proven that she's not ready for prime time, which most people, I think, thought she would not be. And why not? Because she face planted in 2020, first with her own campaign, and then she was pretty widely mocked as the VP. So I think a lot of people were shocked that she's actually a competent candidate, but now the stakes become much higher. So I expect Kamala Harris, unlike Trump and Vance, I expect Harris and Walz to engage in a number of interviews, but almost entirely with friendly media. There's not going to be a press conference. She's not going to say, bring in all of the media and let them fire questions at me. That's not going to happen. If it does, I'll give her an enormous amount of credit. But I think she's going to continue doing what she's done, rallies, a lot of social media presence, and perhaps a second debate.
Let's talk about that social media presence. Obviously, each candidate has their surrogates within the media, especially social media, who are putting out talking points, who are putting out short clips, even making little movies, which are wildly entertaining at worst and might even contain some information at best. But what we've seen is actually, and I did an article on this on the pages of libertynation.com talking about the Trump campaign and how it really seems to me that he's redefining what it means to be a candidate dealing with the new media. And this is something that he almost kickstarted back in 2016 with his engagement on then Twitter. But now he's going around, he's doing podcasts, he's doing long form ranging conversations, like he did the almost 2 hours with Elon Musk on a Twitter, on an X live space. He did computer scientist and podcaster Lex Fridman.
It's an opposite strategy
Yeah.
to the Harris campaign. Trump believes the way to win is to go out there and to take every interview, hostile or friendly, to go long form, go short form, go soundbite, go in-depth interview. And it's really interesting because the Harris campaign has the opposite strategy to tightly contain her and limit her to places where they're confident that she can handle the questioning because most of the media is wanting her to win. Let's be honest, they do. So that's so it's an opposite playing field for Donald Trump. It's sort of like if you look at a football field and it's flat all the way around, but with the media putting its foot on its finger on the scales, so to speak. It's like the playing field is not level, but just tilted a little bit one way so that Donald Trump can still win, but he has to win uphill.
Yeah.
And she could still win. All she has to do is win
running downhill.
And I think those are the essential strategies. And so the country's going to maybe get too much of Trump and not enough of Harris. So what are they going to make of that? It's just, I think we forget too that it's very hard to get into the heads of the everyday American who's looking at this race. It's so insane. I mean, you've had an assassination attempt that narrowly missed of one candidate. The other one had a disastrous debate, the worst of all time. Then he pulls out of the race. Then they elevate this woman who never got a vote, but was the vice president. And now suddenly she's the candidate. I mean, I think this is an awful lot for voters to process. And I don't think they have completed that processing yet.
Yes, we can actually draw a lesson from history here, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this one, Tim. With Harry Truman running against Dewey, and Truman got on the train, and this is where the term the whistle stop campaign came from. And it was William Howard Taft's eldest son who said, Truman doing this crisscrossing of the country on the train, that he was blackguarding Congress by doing this whistle stop tour. And he was the first guy who came up with that term. And yet we did see that, I believe it was the Boston Times or the Boston Herald that was so confident that Dewey would win that they printed.
It was the Chicago Tribune of Dewey beats Truman. And the big picture is with Truman holding up that headline with a huge grin on his face.
And my reason for mentioning this, Tim, is that
one quick anecdote about that, Mark, which is that about 2 weeks before that 1948 election, a lot of the media even stopped covering because when they did a survey of the 50 political reporters covering the White House, all 50 opined that Dewey would win. Yes. So they even stopped covering. And in the end, Truman won fairly handily. So, that's another race there where what did people make of Harry Truman? Because suddenly he came in like 3 months into FDR's fourth term, and they weren't sure what to make of him. Well, he established who he was on that whistle stop tour, and he became Give 'em Hell Harry, and he appealed to the average American. I think Trump would do well to do something like that.
There's a certain connection there, isn't there, across 70 years of time and space. The reason I bring it up is that specifically is because of how Trump's running his campaign. He's doing the digital equivalent of a whistle stop tour. And my guess is that is about to become the standard operating procedure for every presidential candidate going forward. Now, we're going to be back with Tim Donner in just a short moment. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.